afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm just going to pass along the announcement from Tucanos that we had 80 people register for today's event, and so they brought enough food, so y'all need to eat again. So if you're hungry, please feel free to continue to eat, because there's plenty here. And I hope that's just very strange to have 25 people missing. Anyway, we have something a little different today. We talk a lot about the 4 things that we should focus on. If we're dealing with Parkinson's disease, we want to make sure you drink a lot of water, make sure that your diet's good, make sure that you are exercising and reducing your stress. And I have joked with many of you that I can provide water bottles, and I have a background in nutrition, and I can certainly connect you with exercise. I can do absolutely nothing to help you with managing your stress, because I need this class too. So we're really excited to have Jean here with us to share her expertise. And I want to encourage you, this might be a little bit different than the way that you normally look at things. And yesterday I was at a luncheon, and the man had a quote from Thomas Edison and said, if we use the same thinking that caused the problem, we're not going to be able to solve it. And so to think about it and kind of expand your mind a little bit and be open to maybe some new ideas, I'm going to do a little introduction here about Jean. Jean Parker is a retired cognitive therapist. These days she teaches Tai Chi and Qigong at the Kane Halter Y in Powdersville Library. She has found that Tai Chi and Qigong classes have a significant impact on her students' stress management skills, as they report a greater ability to relax, along with improved balance, increased flexibility, and even decreased levels of depression. So you will undoubtedly enjoy Jean's relaxed, positive, come-as-you-are vibe, as she combines her cognitive therapy expertise with some tangible tools to manage stress. So Jean, she lives in Easley, and she also volunteers at the Peace Center. So with that, I would like to introduce Jean Parker.
So I really appreciate that introduction, and I'm hoping that you know that as a cognitive therapist, my brain wants to connect with your brain, because I really believe in my experiences that you can't change your behavior until you change how you think. So I'm going to hope to challenge how you think. Now, one of the challenges of a therapist is that I don't want to blow your mind. I don't want to tell you something that's so far away from where you are that you can't accept what I'm talking about. So I hope that some of what I say to you today is going to sound a little familiar. And then if I stretch your mind a little bit, maybe it won't bother you. So if I'm talking too fast, would you just go like this, please? Because I get excited. I'm looking at you, Robin. So if I talk too fast, Robin is going to be the one to slow me down, because I do get excited about what I have to say. So one of the things that interferes with our handling stress is our self-talk. We have a kind of a monologue going in our minds that is commenting on our behavior. And I'm going to tell you that today, as I was leaving my house, I backed out of the driveway, I packed up all my stuff, and I had everything all set. And I got halfway down the driveway, and I realized I left my phone in the house. So I'm like, can you relate? Thank you. So I'm like, what a dope. You know, I was talking to myself. And I got in the house, and I got my phone, and I sat down back in the corner, and I thought, and I'm going to go talk about stress management. So I'm telling you this because what I'm going to be talking about is very simple, but it's not always easy. So just be warned that you may not be able to do it all right off the bat, and that's certainly not the expectation. So I was talking to my husband about doing this talk, and he says, so you have to start with a joke. And I'm like, this is a very serious topic, Tom, you know, what do you mean? So he says, if you don't tell a joke, nobody's going to listen to anything else you say. So, would you like to hear a joke? So there's a new guy in a retirement place, and he goes into the activity room, and there's a whole bunch of people sitting around, and suddenly one of them yells out, 76! And the whole room bursts into laughter. If you've heard this, be polite. And so he sits there and he's kind of confused, and then somebody yells, 14! And they all scream and laugh. So now he's really confused. So a little bit later, some guy goes, 84. And it's completely quiet. So finally, he has to ask somebody. So he goes to somebody, he goes, what is happening? And the man said, well, we've all been here so long, we know all the jokes. Every joke has a number. And so instead of having to go through the whole joke, we just yell the number, and it worked out great. That's not the punchline. So he says, well, what about the guy that called out that last number? And the fellow said, oh, he could never tell a joke. So Tom will be happy to know that not only did I tell a joke, but you actually laughed. I appreciate that. You're so kind. So I have written down a lot of what I'm saying because I happen to be a person that learns from seeing. Hopefully, many of you are hearing learners, but if not, I'm trying to meet both of us, all of us. And you are welcome to come up after the program and take photographs of any of my charts here so that you can take them home and study them. So these three things are some kind of basic premises that I'm going to refer to, and the next chart also. So I'm going to talk about I'm going to assume that you know that our mind and our body and our souls are all connected. If you watch any sports, you notice that the golfers now are standing there and they really focus. And some of the baseball players, have you seen them? They stand and they take a big cleansing breath, and you can tell they're doing something that's it's a little more than just being physical. They're getting their mind together. And I will talk a lot about how what's going on in our minds is affecting our bodies as well. And then this, fear or love, this is a little more stretchy, but I challenge you to consider that there are really only two emotions. The love one we get. The fear one is a little harder to swallow. But the idea is that anybody who is acting out, who's like yelling or a bully, is afraid that they're not a good enough person, that nobody's going to like them if they just want to get to know them. And so they have to be in control by being nasty. And jealousy, you can see how jealousy is a fear, that your person you love and that you're jealous of doesn't love you back. And I found over the years that the basic fear is that we're not loved and we're not lovable. And that's sort of serious, so I'll get right away from that. And I like the idea that FEAR really stands for false evidence appearing real. Because what we do when something stressful is happening is we panic. And we think, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. And I appreciate that some of you are nodding your head. You can relate to that. So this morning I called myself dumb, just kind of automatically. Of course, I corrected myself after that because I knew I would have to tell you that I did, which I did do. So finally, I'm going to define stress. Stress is what happens in your environment or in your body, and you perceive that you cannot handle that event, and there's nobody to turn to. And what happens then is that you feel anxiety. So when we talk about being stressed out, what we really mean is anxietied out or anxious. So there is a cause and effect relationship between stress, what we perceive, and anxiety, what happens to us in response to that stressful situation. And it can be a virus that's attacking you that causes the stress on the physical body too. So I don't need to remind you about what it feels like to be anxious in the face of stress. You feel scared and hopeless and helpless, isolated, and you can't think clearly, and sometimes you even make knee-jerk reactions that you really regret later because your body and your mind is in a state of total panic, and you just are afraid. I don't want to talk too much about them because I think if there's anybody in this room who's never felt anxiety, you're a lucky person, but I don't think anybody could raise their hand and say they haven't felt anxious. And we feel anxious with small things like losing our phone or falling or embarrassing ourselves, or it's mostly a lot of it's forgetting things, but then we feel anxious about big things too. And I will say that we kind of have like a tank, and that when we get more and more anxious, when we have more and more stress, it gets over into the red, and then things really go bad. And you know, you are here because there is a very serious diagnosis in your life, in yourself or your loved ones, and so your tank is pretty full already. And so I want you to know that I acknowledge that, and I'm hoping that what we can do is maybe lower that tank a little bit. So my request is that you open your mind. I coached Lauren about the biography because I wanted her to say cognitive to you, and you all know what that is. That's, you know, my brain and your brain, so that if you change how you think, it might help for you to change some of your attitudes and some of your behavior in the long run. So here is some more information for your brain about stress and anxiety. Stress is cumulative. That means it keeps piling up if you don't do something about it, and that's because we have this tank of information. Stress is not easier the more you have. It's not like if you practice being less anxious and not responding to stress with anxiety that it's going to go away. It's not like bowling or archery, that if you practice enough, you'll get better. No, you have a stressful thing happen and you handle it. Then you have another stressful thing, and it's just as hard to cope with that as it was at the beginning. You don't get good at it. And of course, the older we get, the longer we've had for it to all build up. Another thing that affects your response to stress is your attitude about life. Are you generally an optimist? Are you generally a pessimist? Or is your glass half empty or half full? Or it's just going to be knocked over anyway? And that's a sort of a challenge for people who are not positive. It makes handling stress a little more difficult. And I want to again underline the idea of perception. What you think really affects how you handle this stress in your life. And I also need to remind you that every so often we use some coping mechanisms that make things worse. Have you ever experienced that? You've had some stress and some anxiety, and you've done something, and it's has even gotten worse. So if you've got this in your head, I'm going to put my next chart up. And you can see I'm going to be talking a lot about how stress and anxiety are related, and how your thoughts, this is not too big, but that's a little cloud of thoughts in there, and thoughts really impact the way that anxiety, that you're able to help with or not. This little box is a very handy thing when you're talking to yourself or with someone else about what to do about stress. I see it, there are 4 things you can do. You can take some action, and that makes things better. You can take some action, and it screws up things even worse. You can do nothing, and that makes things better. Or you can do nothing, and it makes things worse. One of the things that comes right to my mind about what you can do to make things worse with action is to yell at somebody. Now, yelling is okay, but not at somebody. And sometimes when you yell at the person that is there for you, it makes things worse. But this I will be referring to from time to time. So just keep that in mind also. So I'm going to talk about adrenaline and dopamine. Now, adrenaline is what we feel or what we experience when we are faced with a stressful situation. Remember in Psych 101, the picture, the little cartoon of the caveman and the mammoth elephant? And that's called the fight or flight response. And so when something is stressful, our bodies produce extra adrenaline. And that gives us the energy either to stand and fight or leave. Part of leaving is also denying. I'm just going to throw that in. See how your brain takes that. The other thing that the added adrenaline in your body does is that it reduces the amount of dopamine, which is another neurotransmitter. And dopamine is the happy hormone. And so when you're experiencing anxiety and you're getting ready to fight or flight, which happens, and you know your breath gets faster, your heart rate goes up, you feel kind of tense, like you're ready to do something. Those are or your hands get cold. I think that's because the blood is rushing to your trunk to help you fight or run. And so then you have less dopamine. And when you have less dopamine, it's hard to be optimistic. It's hard not to feel blah or blue, and those are depression characteristics. It's scary not to have that dopamine. So the bottom line is, when you are feeling anxious, you are being ruled by chemicals in your body. And it's there, generally it's very handy to have adrenaline, but too much adrenaline over a period of time reduces your dopamine, and then you have more serious kinds of consequences. So when you have muddled thoughts, when you're so anxious, there are some things that exacerbate those muddled thoughts and prevent you from using your head and really deciding and dedicating yourself to getting yourself better. And one of those things is worry. We worry. We think to ourselves, what if this happens? What if that doesn't happen? Maybe this or maybe that. And our thoughts are racing, so we really can't focus on what we need to do. We're in a panic. Are you understanding sort of what I'm talking about? I need a little, thank you. Overthinking is another thing we do. We just ruminate, we think about it, we worry about it. You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know what happens then after you go to the restroom? You lie there and you just think. Your mind is just going in a bunch of different directions. Another thing that aggravates our ability to think clearly is being rigid in your thinking. That's something that we're going to talk about today. That's something that is being spoken over and over again. Being inflexible and being a perfectionist. It's really hard for perfectionists to handle stress because something is going wrong and it drives them crazy. Nobody's nodding at me now, but all you perfectionists know what I'm talking about. Another thing we often do is we think we can read minds. We think that we know what people are thinking. And that's just not always true. Sometimes we can guess accurately, but other times, and a lot of times we can't. We also feel justified that we can make a judgment. That I'm going to get a little drink of something. Isn't this stuff good? Did you taste some? My friend thought it was a pina colada, so I was a little disappointed in that. So we feel justified when we get mad at somebody. We think, well, we have a right to have righteous indignation, right? And that just complicates things. That's on that chart. That action is going to hurt the other person. It's going to make them panic. It's going to make them anxious. So then you have two anxious people, right? And what a mess is that? I like to have suggested to my clients who had problems with their spouse, you can point out when your spouse is screwing up. You can set them straight. Or you can give them a gift of not pointing out what they're doing that is dumb, because they know. We all know when we screw up. And the last thing we need is to hear about it over and over again. So give them a gift. Present them with a break. Does that seem reasonable? Good. Now I'm going to talk about stinking thinking. My friend in AA taught me that. Stinking thinking. What in the world is that? It's like having a talk with yourself. Having that inner conversation, commenting on how things are going for you. It's like me, stinking thinking that I'm dumb because I left my phone there. So the problem with stinking thinking is that we don't even know we're doing it. We constantly do it all the time. And we say mean things to ourselves. I mean, when's the last time you said, you are a great person? When's the last time you looked in the mirror and said, gosh, I really love you. You're doing a great job. I'm not going to ask for anybody to raise their hand because I don't think anybody would. Because what we do in the shower, we think about the things that we missed, that we forgot, that we screwed up, right? And so if somebody talked to somebody we knew or loved that way, we would take exception to that. We wouldn't be happy that somebody was putting somebody else down. We would end that relationship. So I'm going to say to you, what if you end the relationship you have with yourself? What if you end this relationship in which you belittle yourself and put yourself down and give yourself a hard time? Can you just flick it away? And of course you replace it with add a girl, add a boy, add a man, add a woman. Because we all are doing the very best we can. And if you always know that every interaction is that person's best, it might change your attitude toward what's going on in your life. I hate to be so far away from you, but I have to be close to my chart. So that's stinking thinking. And you need to be nice to yourself. So now, that's the introduction. Now I'm going to talk about actually handling stress. And the number one goal is for you to acknowledge that maybe what you're doing isn't working, that maybe having a different idea or a different way of looking at the world is going to change how you handle anxiety and handle stress. And it's going to start by your thinking that maybe Parker has something to say that's going to stay with you. Let's hope. So I invite you to do some reading, to pick a book that's different than what you might ordinarily read. And I happen to have a list of about 10 books to suggest that are good to discuss and good to keep your brain thinking, learn something, and study something. In school, some people didn't like being in school. I hated it being tested because I always wanted to do really, really well. It was a whole lot of pressure. But when you read a book for pleasure that is informative, it's a whole lot different. Keep try to keep your mind open to alternative ways of looking at stuff. And that's not easy. I'm not asking you to do anything that's easy here, folks. It's so simple, but it's just not easy. And then that gives you the opportunity to respond to the stress in a new way. So now my next chart. How to actually handle stress, which means how do we lower the negative impact that the stress is having on our lives. And this is the meat of my presentation today. So I have 10 concepts and ideas. And the first one is to know how stress is affecting your mind and your body. Acknowledge that when you're feeling anxious, you are actually under the influence of a drug. And that drug is adrenaline. Adrenaline you need, but you don't need all that happens when you're constantly feeling anxious. So you have to start slowly in this new way of thinking and accepting that maybe you need to change some of your coping ideas and discuss it. And most of you are here with someone else. And those of you who are not, find somebody to talk about some of this stuff with. But the important thing is for you to really believe that it's worth making those changes, that you are worth the effort to change how you think and then behave. So the first thing is to be your own really good supportive friend. Become aware each time you ridicule yourself and stop yourself and say, I'm doing my best. This is the best I can do. Or I'm not even doing my best, but it's all I can do. You don't have to be perfect at this. You can just give a little shift in how things are in your head. People are so notorious for this bad stinking thinking and lousy self-talk. But talk to yourself like you talk to somebody that you love and respect. And I challenge you to do that, because I think this is the most difficult thing of all, is to acknowledge that you're doing your best. And not everybody can accept that, but I'm pretty sure you have. And if you don't think you can, then come and see me and I'll talk you into it. I think that's only fair. Another thing you can do to focus yourself on yourself and how you're doing is to actually write yourself a letter, like a letter of recommendation, or something that, a supportive note that you would write to a friend. And these are simple things. And another simple thing you can do is journal. And the whole 30 years I worked, the second or third session, I would suggest to my clients, journal. When you journal, you talk to yourself, you hear yourself, you give yourself some support. You know, you're worth 10 minutes of writing. Buy yourself a cute little book and write down what you think. Don't write down what the weather is and what you had for dinner. Write down what's going on inside. The first few times you might have to talk about food. But after that, talk about what's going on and what you're thinking and even what you're feeling. And just accept that that's who you are. Journaling is robustly studied, and it always comes out that journaling lifts depression. Who'd have thought? It takes longer to write in a journal than it does to take a pill. But journaling only has good side effects, which sometimes your pills don't. The other thing is that acknowledge when you need help, mentally or physically. Don't try to do it yourself and swat at somebody who's trying to help you out. Try to be a little more gracious. Our knee-jerk reaction often is to, I can do it myself, I'm fine, leave me alone. but sometimes it strengthens a relationship, even if it's a very casual one, to allow somebody to do something with you or for you. And when you're having conversations, and I'm up to number 5 by now, think, what would the Dalai Lama say? And try that. I had a client once who was a psychologist himself, and he felt very justified in telling his clients that they were goofy, that they were nutty. And I said, and he complained because they didn't come back. And I said, what if the president walked in? Would you say that to them? And he said, no. He says, I can't help it. I said, if it was the president of the United States, you could help it. He did come back. He was not happy to hear that he wasn't justified in telling somebody, are you from Mars? When they talked to him. He actually said that to somebody. They didn't pay him either, which is a good thing. Also, in having a communication, and a lot of this is about your personal relationships. When you have a relationship with somebody and they say something that bothers you, instead of striking out at them, what if you say to them, what do you mean exactly by that? Could you say what you mean? Because generally, somebody is not being mean to you. Somebody is doing their best to respond, and they are trying to meet you halfway. But I've said so often that the guess method of communication is very ineffective. We guess what somebody's saying. What really galls me if somebody says, I know what you're thinking. And my daughters, nobody else except my daughters say that to me. I don't know whether your kids talk to you like that. I keep thinking they'll grow out of their adolescence and they're in their 40s. But, I know what you're thinking. Are you positive about that? But clarify even when somebody says that to you. And also, how often do we name call and ridicule and put down somebody that we live with, somebody who's close to us? We talk to, when we talk about violence in the world and angry people in the world and all that, I have to remind people that we are generally the nastiest to people that we're closest to. That's a terrible thing to imagine, isn't it? And I see some of you are kind of thinking that over because you're squinting at me a little bit, and that's a good sign. I mean, think of the things that you've said to your spouse in the last 2 weeks that were like knives to them, and maybe sometimes you meant it. But when you do that, then you have 2 people who are experiencing anxiety, and then it's sort of more difficult for things to turn around. So another thing you can do is to try something new outside of your comfort level. Take a class or teach a class. Ollie is a great place to go to do that. And I teach Qigong. Some of you saw my poster back there, or my trifold. And we're gonna, I hope, have time to do a little Qigong today, a little Tai Chi. You can do it sitting or standing up. But that would be something interesting and fun to do for you. And you may have to force yourself to do something different. You may have to talk yourself into doing something differently, especially if you've got not too much dopamine. You're not going to have the energy. You're not going to feel like going someplace or doing something. But 90% of the time, once you get there, you're okay. I mean, look at the people that signed up today, and they got up this morning and they said, I'm just not up for this. And it's a shame, but they couldn't. So don't be one of those people that makes an empty table. Just push yourself to do it. So, the next thing we need to talk about is, how do you express intense emotion without hurting somebody else? So I have another quick anecdote. My oldest daughter went to medical school, and she called me one day at noontime, which never happens, and she was sobbing, and she said, "Mom, I was asking questions in a class this morning, and I didn't understand what the professor was saying, even after I asked a question and asked him to clarify." And she said, "He humiliated me in front of all my classmates." And she was sobbing. And she said, "And I have a half an hour at lunch, and I have to go back for the other half of the class." So this is what I told her to do. I said, "Jessica, go into the ladies' room, flush the toilet, and yell. And you can yell one word. I'm not going to tell you what that word is, because I promised that I would not use any S words or F words or anything, but I told my daughter, let her rip. I said, go in there and flush it again and yell whatever you need to yell. And keep flushing until you're spent." I thought that was pretty cool to think of, just kind of off the top of my head. And so what happened from then on in our family, how was your day? It was a 7-flush day, Mom. You can go in your bathroom and flush and yell. You can also, I love to yell in my car. I studied Tai Chi for 20 years. Nobody really knows, who doesn't know me personally, that I'm really not a type A person. I kind of appear to be like this. I get in the car, I say really mean things to the other drivers. And when my kids were babies, they'd say, "Mom, who are you talking to?" I'd say, "That shirt," and she'd go, "But he can't hear you." I'm like, "Ah!" But crying and yelling and cursing in the car with nobody else in it. Did I say that part? You have to do it with nobody else there. My mother used to make me damn it dolls for my students, and they were just dolls with no legs and funny looking things, and they would whack with a damn it doll. That damn it isn't a curse word here, it's a description, right? It's a therapeutic thing. And the same psychologist that I talked to, who was so nasty, kept the damn it doll in his car, and he would whack the dashboard, and of course all the traffic would get out of his way. I never thought about that in advance, but it was very cool for him. Did I talk about everything there? No, I didn't. Zazen and meditation. Meditating is also robustly studied. Finally, in about the last 10 years, they've been telling us for centuries that people who meditate live longer. People who meditate have lower blood pressure. They have lower blood sugar. There's a lot to say about meditation. And Zazen is a breathing meditation that I use when I fall asleep at night. And I would like to teach that to you right this second. Does anybody care? Anybody mind? If you mind, don't do it. Okay, so you just sit and uncross your legs and put your hands on your knees if you can. You can turn them up if you want to. This is so easy, guys. Everybody can do this. If you want to, you can close your eyes and start paying attention to your breathing. It doesn't have to be any kind of fancy breathing. But as you exhale, count that as a 1. And then you exhale again and count that 2. And then 3. And if something comes into your mind, you go back to 1. And you count those exhales. And you notice that each time you exhale, the exhale gets longer. And your breathing slows down. And your heart rate goes down. And your blood pressure goes down. And if each time something else comes to your mind, you have to start at 1. And if you do this tonight as you get into bed, you'll never get to 10 if you can make yourself clear your mind and only focus on those exhales. So now take another deep breath in and make some noise as you blow it out. And come back to the room. People fall asleep. I'm always afraid somebody's going to fall out of their chair when I do that. Thank goodness you all stuck it out and you did not. I appreciate that. You know, that reminds me of my next chart. Laugh. The best thing you can do for endorphins is to laugh. Truly, there's actually a book called The Healing Power of Humor. But when you're really feeling down, I challenge you, and this is not going to be easy, I challenge you to look at reruns of Carol Burnett. Have you seen the dentist one? You know, it is such, it just, you can't, I mean, just thinking about that. Saturday Night Live has some great stuff. I Love Lucy. Think of that. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if every day you took half an hour instead of watching the evening news at 6 o'clock and getting yourself really depressed? What if you watched Cheers or these shows? You could also see movies, funny movies like Young Frankenstein or any of those Monty Python things, Blazing Saddles, an Airplane. And there are books, 700 Sundays with Billy Crystal. And this Efron book is I Feel Bad About My Neck. I won't go into detail, but it's really funny. But just Google funny movies. Google funny TV things. Google babies laughing. You know how little babies chuckle? I mean, you're laughing already just imagining that. So, please feel free to take a picture of this after the program, because I want you to take this home with you. I'm not giving out lists for you. And then here, speaking of lists, is a reading list. Fighting Parkinson's and Winning. I read that book in order to do my talk today. It inspired me. I really highly recommend this book. It's a little outside of Western medicine, but it worked for him. He's an attorney in Florida. Now he lives in Oregon. The Healer Within is another great book. Both of these books talk about meditation and how important it is for you to be healthy when you meditate. Remember, when you I'll talk about that again. Superbrain by Chopra, and Tanzi is a neurologist. You can tell in that book which is Chopra and which is Tanzi, of course. But what they say is your brain is much more powerful than we've ever believed that it was. And that's always nice to know. And I tell my Tai Chi students, I've read Superbrain. If you want a Superbrain too, all you have to do is read that book. It's very handy. So you can see these other books. Some of them have been around a very long time. The Harvard Medical School report about Tai Chi, finally, it's over 600 studies that he talks about that all say that Tai Chi and Qigong are really good for you. They're meditative martial art. They slow down your blood pressure. They're simple to do, and we're going to do some right now. I only have 5 minutes. Do you have many questions? Good. That means we can do some Tai Chi. Yes, sir.
How about yoga?
Well, yoga is good for you too. Personally, for me, it's not as meditative, except the last thing where you lie there and pretend you're dead. That's very relaxing for me. Down dog has never done it for me. I mean, geez, oh, whiz, is this, you know, and so for me, it's too much trouble. Wait till you see how easy Qigong is. So if you are comfortable standing, do that. If not, push yourself away from the chair a little bit so that you can move your arms around. Let's do it. The reason I'm doing this today is that I want you to experience how easy it is to do Qigong. I would never bring up what a pain it is for me to do yoga, but I was very happy that Dick asked me that question, because then I got to say how much easier Qigong is. So you stand with your feet shoulder width apart, And your toes are in a little bit. Now your mom's always told you not to toe in, but this makes a kind of a tripod for you. So if you're sitting, would you move your chair around so you can see what's going on? And you can use your arms. And in Superbrain and in the Harvard Medical School, they say this: if you imagine that you're doing something, it has the same physiological and mental impact as if you really do it. These professionals, these real guys said that. I mean, can you imagine that? You don't really have to do it. You can just imagine that you do it. Who knows? Okay. So then you tip your hips forward so that the small of your back is flat. That engages your core. So the whole class that you're doing of Tai Chi is engaging that core. And your shoulders are back and your knees are really soft, and you keep your knees soft. Your hands are like feathers, and you raise them up. And then they flow back down. So you mirror me. You breathe in, deep abdominal breath, and then you breathe out. Are your knees still soft? Breathe in and breathe out. This time, open your arms and then have the arms go right back down where they were. Form is called bird opens wings. See that bird, be the bird, why not? Bird opens wings. Now we usually do about 9 of each one, but I'm going to skip the other 6 and ask you to bring your hands up towards your heart. About 1 inch apart, they stop. And then you engage your knees and greet the afternoon. Breathe in and greet the afternoon. And smile, thank you. Smiles actually, release endorphins like running. I'd much rather smile than run. Laughing makes endorphins too. You good laughers. And now your hand floats to your hip. Most of your weight's on that side. If you're in a seated position, you can still do this. Raise your palm up. Bend that elbow down towards your face. And then the other side. Bend the elbow up over your head. Ooh, you're getting a good side body stretch before you know what's happening to you. Breathe in and breathe out. How often do you actually stretch like this? When you try to get your seatbelt on, speaking of tension, mutter, mutter. And now extend that left arm, mirror me, turn it up. The other palm floats to the crown of your head. Oh, even the guys from the food are doing this. And then you shift weight. And then now goes up. Oh, I forgot to put on my Qigong outfit. Thank you. Did you hear what she said? Don't berate yourself. This is called dancing rainbows. Do you see all the dancing rainbows in this room? And now turn that left palm down. Pull it into your waist. The other palm floats over the top of your head to your mouth. And you're going to swivel. And then the left hand comes up to your face. And you swivel the other way. Are your shoulders still soft? Are your knees still soft? Are your hips? You're getting a little rowdy. You must be feeling good. Okay. So now let's make a Qi ball. This is called the Emperor's Stance. For thousands of years, only the emperors and the holy men could do Qigong. So now take a little half a step with your left foot turn the ankle. I'm metamorphosizing here. I'm sorry, guys. I just have to do this because I've been suffering with this outfit on all this time. You want my shirt, my jacket? Oh, I got it here. See this? Look at this. Now, doesn't this have more credibility? So we're doing this. Turn that front heel out a little bit, and then bend the knee, and then back up again, and bend that front knee, and then back up. So this is called Emperor Rolls the Ball. So I guess we better roll the ball. Start by going up over the ball, circling around it, and coming back. Emperor rolls the ball. Now, Qigong is the meditative martial art. Just focus on how soft you can keep your body. And let's roll the ball down first. And then up. Down. Emperor rolls the ball. I think you have it. Come back. This time, out goes your left foot. It curls a little bit, and roll the ball. I so appreciate that when I look at you and smile, you smile back. It's very handy when you're the speaker that you know you're not making a fool of yourself. And then you roll the ball the other way. Hold on to that chi ball. Come back to center. You have some energy between your hands. Don't drop it. Don't drop this chi ball. One second with it. So then what you do is you rub your hands together. And maybe they're feeling really smooth, and it could be that the chi has done that. And then you apply the chi to your heart, to your mind, to your knees, right to your back. You apply where you need healing, and your hands know where to go. So I'm going to do one more form, if that's okay. It's only 5 up. Am I good? Okay. So let's collect some chi from flowers, sweetness, delicacy. And we collect so much that now we can go the other way and present flowers. Collect some more yin energy, sweetness, gentleness, compassion, and present it. Now nobody's throwing them, and I appreciate that. Breathing in and breathing out. Somebody may come to your mind who needs this sweetness today. They may not be here. They may be in Washington, but who's sane? Laughter is so good. You're getting lots of endorphins, guys. So now cross your wrists in front of you. You're going to bend that left knee and divide the sky. So join me in my delusion. I can see a bright blue sky above. Can you? Puffy clouds? I heard a yes. Breathing in. Divide the sky. So now the sky turns nighttime because you're going to hug the moon. Embrace the moon. Your palms are facing each other now. Do it again. Isn't this easy? I mean, who would have thought exercise is so fun? And let me tell you folks, you're getting aerobic exercise. It's in the books, swimming, walking, Qigong, aerobic, because you're breathing slowly. Good. And then you come back. Raise your palms up, put them down. Turn them. And then float them right down your body. So you're going to pull up earth. Pull down heaven, keeping your knees really soft, even when your hands are up over your head. That confuses your brain. You should confuse your brain every day at least once. So for some of us, it's easier than others. Pull up earth. Pull down heaven. Now we're going to pause here and push up heaven. And then open your arms again. And let's do that a second time. Push up heaven. Now I'm teaching you Qigong, which means we repeat the forms, each form a bunch of times. That's what makes it so easy. Now I'm going to teach you just a little piece of Qigong, and I will be done by 1 o'clock, I promise. Feel the tall grass. Lead with that left elbow to push away the branch. That same palm swats the fly. See how one follows the next? And then the left hand comes up. See the crane fly by. Let's do that again. Feel the tall grass. Can you feel it? Push away the branch. Smell the branch. Breathe in a deep abdominal breath. And then you swat the fly. But of course, this is in swat. You would think fly. And now, see the crane fly by. It's a loud crane. And I hate to stop, but we have to do our closing ceremony. Now, my instructor for 10 years was Ping Zhao. Guess where she was born? And she taught us that even if we had to leave the class early, we had to do this part of the form, because she said, you've got all that extra chi and you might have an accident on the way home. She said it with a Chinese accent, which I cannot do. So this is the ending. So are you ready? Thumbs on your thighs. Raise your palms up. And then you clap once. And you rub your hands together and you apply it where you need to, and try not to knock your microphone off. My daughter says I look like Beyonce with this on me. Then you do that again without the clap. And then your palms move down in front of your body. They get to your waist and they make a big circle. Now ladies, put the middle of the palm of your left hand right in the middle of the back of your right hand. Guys, do the opposite. So I'm going to move around. Ladies, leave your right hand on top, your left hand on top. And then guys, mirror me. Your right hand is on top. And 2 or 3 inches below your waist is your middle dantian. It's your storage unit. And so you want to draw, by rubbing your hands around, draw the excess chi into your lower dantian. So you're going home with a souvenir of the day. And then you roll your palms the other way. And you do it 9 times when you're doing it for real. And then your palms come to rest. You're breathing deeply and gently into your palms, remembering that you have collected chi, you have stored it, and you can utilize it whenever you need a little boost of energy. Remember that. You are forever changed. One last time for today, your thumbs float to your thighs. You raise up those arms. They come together overhead and float to your heart. And I thank you for the honor of sharing your chi today. That was so nice. I really enjoyed this. This was so much fun.
Jean, thank you so much. I hope that you, there was a lot of laughing, which means that you were enjoying it. But I think my favorite line was, I'd rather smile than run. Anybody else like that one? Well, thank you for being here. Thank you, Tucanos, as always, for the wonderful food. I also want to thank our sponsor for today's lunch is Brookdale Senior Living and Brookdale Hospice, who are big supporters of everything we do at GAP, so thank you for being here today.
If you have questions, I'll be here.
Yes, there is materials on our table for where Jean teaches the class, a little bit more information about it. So if you'd like to do that again, she can let you know where she is going to be teaching. Again, in Easley and also at Powdersville, right? in Powdersville and the King Halter Y. Our next speaker seminar is on nutrition, and it will be August 15th, so look for the information regarding that. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, and if you have questions about any of the programs coming up this summer, we'll be in the back too. Thank you. Thank you again, Jean.